What if the most potent substance in the universe isn't some exotic element from a distant star, but the very creative force flowing through you right now? And what if, instead of mastering it, you're letting it drain away moment by moment? We call it libido, desire, impulse, a fleeting biological urge to be either spent for a moment's pleasure or repressed out of shame. We've been taught to treat this fire as a dangerous thing, something to either unleash or extinguish. A toddler's choice when you think about it. Spill the paint everywhere or lock the box and never create anything at all. But what if this is a profound misunderstanding, a misreading of the most fundamental instruction manual for human consciousness? What if there is a third path, not of indulgence or denial, but of transformation, the path of the alchemist? Ancient traditions, from the Taoist sages of the East to the Hermetic philosophers of the West, saw this energy completely differently. They didn't see a biological problem to be solved. They saw the raw, chaotic, and sacred material of reality itself, the prima materia from which a higher self could be forged. What we're about to explore isn't about morality or celibacy. It's about a lost spiritual science, a key to perceiving and shaping a completely different reality by learning to command the very engine that creates it. Let's begin by dismantling a deeply ingrained illusion. We perceive our creative sexual energy as a resource that builds up and demands release, a pressure in a system. When it builds, we feel tension, a distraction, an itch that must be scratched. Once released, we feel a moment of calm, a return to baseline. And so the cycle repeats endlessly. But what if this entire model of pressure and release is wrong? What if the energy isn't a hydraulic system, but an electrical one? Think of it this way. A battery doesn't feel pressure to be spent. It holds a charge, a potential. You can drain it in a quick, bright flash, leaving you with nothing. Or you can plug it into a complex circuit, allowing it to power a sophisticated machine for a very long time, accomplishing incredible tasks. The energy itself is neutral. The question is never about the energy, but about the quality of the circuit it flows through. And that circuit, that machine, is your own consciousness, your body and your mind. Most of us are living with an incredibly primitive internal circuit. It has one function, discharge. We feel the surge of this potent energy, and our default programming immediately directs it downwards and outwards for procreation or pleasure. It's a biological imperative, yes, but it's the lowest possible expression of this force, like using a fusion reactor to toast a piece of bread. So what happens when you decide to upgrade the wiring? What if, instead of letting the energy drain out, you create new pathways for it to flow upwards, inwards, through the vast, unexplored landscapes of your own nervous system and psyche? This isn't just a metaphor, it's the very basis of a forgotten technology of the soul. This technology of the soul begins with a radical act of reinterpretation. The signal we have been trained to call desire is not a command to act. It is an announcement that a powerful resource has just become available. Imagine your inner world is a grand alchemical laboratory. Every so often, a shipment of precious, raw, unformed energy arrives at your door. It is pure potential, liquid fire. The modern mind, trained for instant gratification and quick fixes, has been taught to see this divine delivery as an inconvenience, a problem to be disposed of as quickly as possible. We mistake the arrival of gold for the accumulation of waste, and so we live in the subtle consequences of this grand misunderstanding. A life governed by the discharge circuit is a life of constant oscillation. It swings between the sharp, narrow peak of craving and the long, dull valley of apathy that follows. It's a state of being perpetually distracted, of having our creative focus and our very willpower constantly hijacked by a biological echo. We wonder why we can't sustain a long-term vision, why our spiritual well feels dry, why we carry a profound sense of untapped potential simmering just beneath the surface of our daily lives. It is because we are consistently, habitually, throwing away the very fuel needed for the great journey inward. It seems the oldest advice in the world is to know thyself. Funny how that's still the hardest final boss to beat. This raises a crucial question. If our modern interpretation has led us to this state of spiritual bankruptcy, what did the original authors of this manual, the ancient engineers of the human spirit, truly intend for us to build with this sacred fire? This understanding wasn't born in the modern age. It is a golden thread, woven through the most profound spiritual and esoteric traditions in human history. They spoke different languages, used different symbols, but they all pointed to the same astonishing secret. In ancient China, the Taoist masters spoke of Jing, the primordial essence. They saw it not just as sexual fluid, but as the physical root of our vitality, our very life force, stored in the body's energetic centers. To waste Jing through careless ejaculation was seen as the single greatest obstacle to health, longevity, and spiritual illumination. Their entire system of Qigong and internal alchemy was built upon one foundational goal: to conserve, purify, and circulate this Jing, transforming it into Qi, life force energy, and then into Shen, spiritual energy, lighting up the mind from within. Travel west to the sands of India, and you find the Tantrics. They revered this power as Shakti, the divine feminine creative force, coiled at the base of the spine as the serpent goddess Kundalini. For them, the sexual act was not a sin to be avoided, but a sacred ritual. Its purpose, however, was radically inverted. The goal was to prevent the downward release of energy, and instead, draw the Shakti upwards through the central channel of the spine, awakening each chakra until it united with Shiva, the divine masculine consciousness, in the crown of the head. This was the true Hierosgamos, the sacred marriage achieved not outside, but within the temple of the human body. And this wasn't exclusive to the East. In the hidden laboratories of medieval Europe, the Western alchemists pursued the magnum opus, the great work. Publicly, they spoke of turning lead into gold. Esoterically, the lead was the dense, chaotic, raw desire nature of the unawakened human. The gold was the enlightened solar consciousness of the adept. The entire process was fueled by what they called the secret fire, or Azoth, a universal life force that they learned to contain within the alembic of their own being. To them, every unmastered impulse was a leak in this crucial vessel, scattering the fire and ruining the great work. 3 different maps from 3 different corners of the world, all leading to the same treasure, the understanding that our creative energy is not a curse, but the key to our own evolution. So why has this knowledge become so obscure? This isn't just a matter of obscure texts. It's a living, breathing undercurrent that shaped entire civilizations. Consider the Orphic traditions of ancient Greece, a mystical path that heavily influenced thinkers like Plato. They taught the concept of metempsychosis, the transmigration of the soul through multiple lifetimes. The goal was to purify the soul from its titanic or earthly passions, to reclaim its Dionysian or divine nature. Central to this purification was the mastery over the body's desires, not through brute repression, but through understanding them as echoes of a higher spiritual longing. The energy spent in worldly pursuits was the very energy needed to break the cycle of rebirth. Even within mainstream traditions, this secret was often hidden in plain sight. Take the story of Jacob wrestling with the angel in the Hebrew Bible. Esoterically, this is not a literal fight, but a profound metaphor for the adept's struggle to conquer their own lower nature, their own biological angel of procreation. Jacob doesn't kill the angel. He grapples with it all night, refusing to let it go until it blesses him. The blessing is a new name, Israel, and a new state of being. He emerges wounded, walking with a limp, signifying that he has been permanently changed by the encounter. He has mastered the force without destroying it, and in doing so has transformed it from an adversary into a source of divine power. These traditions, whether they called it Jing, Shakti, Azoth, or the angel, all understood a fundamental law of spiritual physics. Energy follows attention. Where you place your focus, the current of your life force flows. By constantly directing this creative fire towards fleeting external release, we are not just wasting a substance, we are actively casting a vote, reinforcing a reality where we are merely biological machines. But by learning the art of containment and redirection, we begin to cast a different vote. We vote for a reality where we are alchemical laboratories, capable of the most extraordinary transformations. If these ideas resonate with you, consider subscribing so we can continue this journey together. The question then becomes not one of history, but of practice. How did they do it? What were the actual mechanics of this internal alchemy? This ancient wisdom is not just a fascinating philosophy, it is a practical art. The alchemists called it the magnum opus, the great work, and it wasn't a single action, but a sequence of operations. Let's translate 3 of these core principles into a functional map for our own inner laboratory. The first operation is known as calcinatio, or calcination. This is the process of heating a substance to burn away its impurities. In our inner work, this represents the conscious act of observing and questioning the raw urge itself. The explanation is simple. When the impulse arises, instead of immediately identifying with it or acting on it, you step back and become the observer. You place it under the gentle heat of your awareness. This anchors directly in your human experience. Think of the last time you felt this powerful urge. It likely felt monolithic, all-consuming, but under observation, it reveals its components: a physical sensation, an emotional charge, a cascade of mental images. It's not one thing, it's a complex weather pattern passing through you. The bridge to practice here isn't to fight the urge, but to become intensely curious about it. Ask, what is this really? Where in my body do I feel it? What story is my mind telling me right now? This act of detached observation is the flame. It separates the pure energy from the compulsive story attached to it. The second operation is solutio, or dissolution. This means dissolving the purified substance into a universal solvent, water. For our purposes, this is the art of relaxing and circulating the energy rather than letting it stagnate and build pressure. The explanation is this: once you have isolated the pure energy through observation, you must give it a new path. Stagnant energy creates that feeling of pressure we mistake for a need to release. Circulating energy feels like vitality. Think about how tension builds in your jaw or shoulders when you're stressed. The energy is stuck. When you consciously breathe into that area, the tension dissolves and circulates. The same principle applies here. The practical application is conscious breath and visualization. Instead of letting the energy pool in your lower body, use your breath as a pump. As you inhale, visualize drawing that warm, vibrant energy up your spine. As you exhale, imagine it washing down the front of your body like a gentle waterfall. The Taoists called this the microcosmic orbit. It is the fundamental technique for upgrading your internal circuitry from a discharge model to a circulation model. The third operation is coagulatio, or coagulation. This is the final step where the dissolved essence is precipitated back into a new, stable, and more refined form. This is the art of transmutation, channeling the circulated energy into a higher expression. The explanation is clear. Energy that is merely circulated without purpose can still dissipate. The goal is to give this refined life force a new mission. You are consciously redirecting the raw power of creation towards a creative act of your own choosing. This is where the magic happens. Ponder this. The same energetic impulse that can lead to a few seconds of empty pleasure could be the very fuel for a breakthrough on a difficult project, a surge of inspiration for your art, a moment of profound connection with a loved one, or a deep spiritual insight in meditation. The practice is intentional redirection. When you feel that vital circulating energy, immediately pour it into something that matters. Write that difficult email. Go for a run and push your limits. Pick up your instrument. Work on your business plan. You are taking the raw material of life and consciously choosing what masterpiece you want to build with it. This is the heart of the great work. Not denying the fire, but becoming the master of the forge. To truly master calcinatio, we must understand its most potent and misunderstood tool, asceticism. This word isn't about punishment or self-hatred. Its root, ascesis, simply means training or exercise. It is the spiritual equivalent of an athlete training for the Olympics. The ascetic, from the desert fathers in Christian mysticism to the yogis of the Himalayas, understood a crucial secret. The ego, our sense of a separate self, feeds on indulgence. It strengthens its grip with every satisfied craving. To perform calcination effectively, to burn away the impurities, one must first learn to stop feeding the ego its favorite fuel. This is why practices like fasting, periods of silence, or intentional withdrawal from worldly pleasures are found in nearly every spiritual tradition. They are not arbitrary rules. They are sophisticated techniques of calcination. When you consciously say no to a lesser impulse, be it for food, for distraction, for release, you are not just denying a craving. You are placing the ego itself into the alchemical fire. You create a space, a gap, where you can clearly see the difference between I, the observer, and it, the craving. This separation is the true beginning of freedom. Without this foundational training in self-mastery, the urge is too strong, the identification too complete. Ascetic practice is the discipline that builds the container strong enough to hold the fire. Let's populate this inner laboratory with more tools, more tangible examples of this sacred training, this ascesis. This isn't about adopting a monastic life, but about weaving moments of intentional fire tending into the fabric of our modern existence. Consider the ancient and often misunderstood practice of chastity, championed by mystics within Christianity. This was never about viewing sexuality as inherently sinful. Esoterically, it was a profound form of calcination. The mystics understood that the mercury of the mind, our fluidic, ever-moving consciousness, could become sticky and heavy, weighed down by obsessive thoughts and compulsive attachments born from unmastered desire. By consciously abstaining, they weren't repressing energy. They were purifying their mental field. They were creating a clean, non-stick surface within the mind, allowing the secret fire to circulate without getting caught in the mire of fantasy and craving. This created a clear, crystalline inner silence, making the higher stages of the work possible. Now, think about the body, the salt of the alchemical trio. The body holds the dense patterns of our habits. To purify it, the training must be physical. The Japanese author Yukio Mishima, in his meditation Sun and Steel, spoke of forging his body through weightlifting and martial arts under the blazing sun. This wasn't vanity. It was a ritual of rectification. Intense physical exertion, especially when done with focused intent, is a powerful calcination. It is a voluntary trial by fire. When you push your body to its limits, through a long run under the sun, a demanding yoga posture, or the disciplined shock of a cold plunge, you are burning away apathy, laziness, and the body's unconscious resistance. You are teaching your very cells that consciousness, not comfort, is the master. The possibilities for this training are endless and can be adapted to any life. Practice fasting from media. Choose one day a week to abstain from all news, social media, and empty entertainment. This starves the part of the ego that feeds on outrage and distraction, clarifying the mercury of the mind. Embrace voluntary hardship. Choose to take the stairs instead of the elevator. Carry your groceries instead of using a cart for a short distance. These small acts of choosing the harder path are microdoses of calcination, tempering your will. Master the art of the sacred pause. Before eating, take 1 minute of silence to contemplate the food. Before speaking in a heated conversation, take one conscious breath. This creates a space between stimulus and reaction, which is the very birthplace of self-mastery. Each of these practices is a small fire. Each one is an opportunity to perform the great work in miniature. They are how you keep the alchemical process not as a distant theory, but as a living, breathing reality, moment by moment, breath by breath. With this stronger container, the cycle can deepen. Each round of calcination, each successful observation and detachment from an impulse, naturally leads to solutio. As the ego's grip weakens, so does our attachment to the outcomes of our desires. This is the great dissolution, the dissolving not just of a single urge, but of the needy, grasping self. We begin to circulate the energy with less friction, because we are less identified with the need for a specific result. The energy flows freely, because we have become more fluid, more like water ourselves. And this enhanced solutio empowers a more potent coagulatio. As the energy circulates, purified and unattached, it begins to crystallize on a higher level. The focus of the coagulation is no longer a worldly desire, but an inner light, what the Taoists called Shen, or spiritual consciousness, what the alchemists called phosphorus, the light bearer. You are no longer just redirecting energy into a project. You are using it to build the very vehicle of your immortal self, the body of light. But here is the most profound secret. This is not a one-time event. The magnum opus is not a linear process with a final graduation. It is a spiral. You complete a cycle of calcinatio, solutio, coagulatio, and you find yourself stabilized on a new, higher level of awareness. But on this new level, you will discover more subtle impurities, more refined attachments to be placed in the fire. A new, more subtle calcination begins. The great work is the very rhythm of a conscious soul's evolution, a continuous cycle of refining, dissolving and reforming itself, climbing a spiral staircase towards the sun, forever. It never ends, because you are infinite. We have been exploring this great work as a personal journey, a path to forge a higher self, to gain mastery over our inner world. And for the most part, that is true. But this is where the map suddenly unfolds into a territory so vast, it can shake the very foundation of who you think you are. The alchemists had a famous axiom, as above, so below. We've been focused on the below, our own internal microcosmic process. Now, let's dare to look above. What if this energy we are learning to transmute is not just our energy? What if this creative force, this secret fire, is not generated by us, but merely flows through us? Imagine the entire universe, the entire cosmos, is a single, thinking, creating entity, a divine mind. And just like our own minds, it has a creative energy, a cosmic libido, a desire to know and experience itself. In the Gnostic Gospels, this was hinted at with the concept of Sophia, the divine wisdom whose passionate desire to create without her consort led to the birth of the material world. What if the Big Bang was not just a physical event, but the ultimate macrocosmic act of creative release? If that is the case, then the impulse you feel within you is not just a biological urge for procreation. It is a fractal echo of the original cosmic impulse that created galaxies. You are a vessel, a temporary focal point, through which the universe itself seeks to continue its endless act of creation and self-discovery. And here is the reviravolta, the mind-bending twist. When you waste this energy, you are not just depleting your personal vitality. You are, in a very real sense, leaking the creative potential of the cosmos itself onto barren ground. But when you master it, when you contain it and consciously redirect it, what are you really doing? You're not just building a better you. You are taking the universe's creative force and becoming a conscious, deliberate co-creator alongside it. You stop being a passive conduit for cosmic desire and become an active artist, using the universe's own paint to add your unique stroke to the masterpiece of reality. The question is no longer, how do I improve my life? The question becomes, what does the universe want to create through me? But this rabbit hole goes even deeper. The idea of being a conduit or a co-creator might still imply a separation, a universe out there and a me in here helping it along. The truly radical proposition suggested by both ancient mysticism and fringe theoretical physics is that this separation is the final illusion. The physicist John Wheeler famously proposed the participatory anthropic principle. In essence, it suggests that the universe does not exist as a concrete, finished reality independent of us. Instead, it exists as a sea of quantum potential, a cloud of infinite possibilities. It is only brought into concrete existence through the act of observation by a conscious participant. In Wheeler's own words, the universe is a self-excited circuit that grows from bit, information, observation, to it, physical reality. Now let's connect this staggering concept with our alchemical work. If consciousness is the mechanism that collapses potential into reality, then what is the fuel for that mechanism? What is the force that directs the gaze of consciousness and gives it the power to impregnate the void? It is the very secret fire we've been discussing. Imagine the quantum foam of potentiality as a vast, dark, fertile soil. A scattered, unfocused consciousness, constantly drained by the discharge circuit, barely illuminates this field. It creates a reality that is largely chaotic, accidental, a reflection of its own inner noise. But a consciousness that has mastered the alchemical arts, one that circulates a potent, purified, and highly coherent stream of creative energy, that consciousness becomes a focused beam of light. It doesn't just passively observe reality, it actively organizes it. It takes the infinite what-ifs of the quantum field and coagulates them into a chosen what-is. This reframes the great work entirely. You are not just changing yourself, you are changing the fundamental tool with which the universe experiences and creates itself. Every time you transmute an impulse, you are not just improving your focus, you are sharpening the very pen that writes the laws of your reality. What if every uncontrolled release of this energy is not just a personal loss, but an act of cosmic static, a vote for a more chaotic and less meaningful universe? To realize that you are not just a passenger in reality, but a potential co-author, is both exhilarating and terrifying. It shatters the comfortable paradigm of victimhood. Suddenly, the state of your inner world is no longer a private matter. It becomes an ethical choice of cosmic significance. This is the responsibility of awakening. If your inner state, fueled and colored by the quality of your circulating life force, is truly the lens that collapses potential into actuality, then every mood, every thought, every choice becomes a creative act. The world you experience is no longer something that happens to you, but something that responds to you. This is the deepest meaning of the Hermetic principle of correspondence. Your inner world is not just a reflection of the outer world. The outer world is a reflection of your inner one. This dissolves all spiritual bypasses. We can no longer blame our chaotic lives on external forces if our internal energy is in a constant state of chaos. We cannot demand a world of beauty, coherence, and meaning if we are continually choosing to spill the very substance of creation on trivialities. The alchemist understands that the world is a mirror. If you want to see gold in the mirror, you must first create gold within the crucible of your own soul. This also radically transforms our relationships. When you interact with another person, you are not just two egos meeting. You are two worlds, two reality-generating engines colliding and co-creating. The quality of the energy you bring to that interaction, be it coherent and vital or scattered and needy, directly influences the potential that can manifest between you. Deep connection, profound intimacy, true collaboration. These are not accidents. They are the alchemical products of individuals who have learned to manage their own sacred fire and can therefore share its light rather than steal its warmth. Living with this knowledge means every moment becomes a choice. Am I feeding the reality I say I want, or am I feeding the reality I claim to despise? There is no neutral ground. Every thought, every action, every mastered or squandered impulse is a vote. It's a vote cast in the silent, cosmic election that determines what kind of universe gets to be born, right here, right now. This realization brings us face to face with a startling form of spiritual accountability. The Stoic philosopher Epictetus stated that our primary task is to distinguish between what we can control and what we cannot. We cannot control the vast ocean of quantum potential, the infinite what-ifs. But we have absolute sovereignty over one thing, the quality of the signal we transmit into that ocean, our state of being. What does this mean in practice? It means that tending to your inner alchemical state is no longer a self-help project. It becomes your primary duty. It is the most potent form of activism. Before trying to change the world, the alchemist must first master their own laboratory. Why? Because a chaotic, undisciplined consciousness, no matter how well-intentioned, will inevitably project and create more chaos. It's like trying to paint a masterpiece with a brush dipped in mud. The intention may be for beauty, but the result will be a reflection of the medium. This is the hidden flaw in so much of our striving. We want peace in the world, but we cannot cultivate it within our own nervous system for even a few minutes. We want clarity and truth to prevail, but we allow our own mental mercury to be polluted by distraction and negativity. We want a world of connection and love, but we haven't learned to master the very energy that forges connection, allowing it to leak into patterns of craving and attachment. The responsibility of awakening is therefore profoundly humbling. It forces us to withdraw our projections and stop blaming the mirror for the face it reflects. The work is always and only here, inside. The question shifts from, how do I fix the broken world, to, how do I forge myself into the instrument that can transmit a reality of unbroken wholeness? Every successful act of calcination, every conscious circulation in solucio, every creative act of coagulatio is not just a personal victory, it is a signal of coherence sent out into the quantum field, a quiet vote for a more ordered, more luminous cosmos. It is the most subtle and most powerful way of changing the world from the inside out. So we arrive not at an answer, but at the threshold of a much larger room. We began this journey hunting for a secret to personal power, a way to master the fire within. We found something infinitely more profound, our own signature, written into the contract of creation. The alchemist's great work, we now see, is not confined to the small vessel of the self. The laboratory is reality. The prima materia is the infinite sea of potential. The secret fire is the current of cosmic creation flowing through you. And the philosopher's stone is a state of consciousness so pure and coherent, it can precipitate a universe of meaning and order from the chaos of pure possibility. And this leaves us shivering before a beautiful cosmic dilemma. If we are truly instruments through which the universe experiences and creates itself, what happens when the instrument awakens? What happens when it learns to purify itself, to hold the note, to choose its own music? Are we here to simply play the song of our biological conditioning, echoing the past? Or are we here to become composers, using that sacred fire to channel a symphony that has never been heard before? Perhaps the goal is not to solve this paradox, but to live inside its creative tension, to accept that we are both the clay and the sculptor, the question and the answer. The hunt for mystery is not about finding a final truth, but about becoming the kind of person who is worthy of the search. The true mystery is not what we find, but what we choose to create with the fire we carry. And that's our hunt for now, a wild mix of documented history and tantalizing what-ifs based on bibliographical sources. What do you think? Like this journey? Hit subscribe for more mysteries.